Hi, I'm Angel Eduardo. I'm senior writer and editor for Fire, and we're down here in Memphis for Freedom Fest talking to some awesome and interesting people. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Salomé Sibonex. I know Salomé from Twitter, where she has a number of beautiful, concise little nuggets of wisdom and sometimes provocative nonsense just to see what the comments are. But she's an influencer, and I love what she has to say, so thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Super excited.
So we've talked before, and I've talked to you about this before, but I want to get more into it because you are a Miami Cuban,
Yeah.
first generation, right?
Yes.
So your parents immigrated from Cuba,
Yes.
and yet you were a hardcore socialist, is that right?
We're getting
Hardcore
right
lefty
into
socialist?
my history.
Yeah.
Okay, love it. Okay, yeah, it's important to explain. I think that it's one of the pitfalls of being like a first-gen immigrant is that you can hear about the stories, but the reality is that you're raised in a land that is very different. So, I didn't learn to appreciate things like free speech because I always had it. I was raised in an environment where I never had to worry about, government coming after me because I was criticizing it. I never experienced things like that. I had a really, regular, comfortable upbringing. And I think that my mom, who is the one that immigrated, my dad was born in the US.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she, there is this desire for immigrants to save their children from that past. So it's like they don't want to put that on you. They're not like, hey, do you know how bad it was? It's more just like, I want you to do good here. I want you to enjoy the things here, and I want that to be in the past. And so it was when I went to Cuba and started seeing what it was like to lack opportunity in particular.
When was this?
This has to be like 6 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
It was pre-pandemic.
6 years ago. So,
Yeah.
But this was after your hardcore commie phase?
This was around it. I mean, this is a little bit after, but this helped to be a catalyst because it was like I couldn't have seen that. I couldn't look at that and then still make excuses.
But I want to know actually before. I want to know how you even got into that.
Okay, that was Tumblr.
You can imagine.
I was indoctrinated by Tumblr.
Okay,
I'm a victim of Tumblr.
Because I can imagine your parents going, "Wait, what are you doing?" You know?
Yeah, and my mom was kind of like, well, that's not really how that went. But I was like, Mom, you don't know, which is very much like the arrogance of the youth. Yes, 100%. Like, well, the reason it didn't work there is because this, that, and the other. And I read this thing on Tumblr. And I mean, it is a lot of this arrogant ethos, but it's particularly poisonous because it's coupled with the naivety of youth.
So how old were you, and what exactly was the thing that started you on that path?
Okay, I think I started to be a lot more pulled into the ideas that are really common now, like very much like what we call woke leftism, all that like intersectionality, talk of privilege, the idea of framing language and things like this as violence and that words can do harm and things like that. All of that was percolating on Tumblr. Things started to come more to a head publicly. And then 2020 was when we had like the BLM riots. And I remember seeing all this like chaos and genuine violence and people excusing it as like, looting is redistributive justice and stuff like that. And I was like, that's an independent business. So that's when you started
turning around.
Yeah.
But what were you like during that period before that?
Insufferable.
That's like, what do you mean? Like,
so it's just very rigid in my views. Very much like disingenuous in the way that I would argue things because the point was to hold the view. The point wasn't to figure out whether the view was true or not. It was to hold that view. It's very much like this motivated reasoning where these are the views I have to be considered good, to be accepted in this sphere. So I need to figure out how to justify them.
And what were your views on free speech and free expression during that period?
Oh my gosh, this is such a great question because it's so important. So not good, and
right.
Not good. I didn't use free speech. I was very self-censored, and it's because I was in this culture where...
Oh, you were self-censoring. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, big time. So
because that means you were having thoughts and then suppressing them.
Yeah, exactly. So that ties in with the idea of I need to find a way to justify these views. And that's that little seed of like, okay, I'm really differing from these views that my peers are holding, do I say that? This is a hugely psychological thing. It wasn't obvious to me that I was suppressing it at first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and this is really complex to try to unwind because we lie to ourselves, right? We lie to ourselves all the time. I'm probably lying to myself about something right now that I have yet to figure out. And so it's that process of figuring out, what am I unwilling to even grapple with within myself? What am I unwilling to express? And so for me, it was like being potentially wrong about something, questioning views that were held by all my peers. That was just a non-starter, because what was more important to me was to fit in with those peers, to be liked by them, but more importantly, to not become the target of their attacks. And that was enough of a motivation to just think like, well, these look like the views that prevent me from being a target. And all of this is like, it's not like I'm in my head. These are the views that prevent. It's not. It's just like,
it's a feeling.
Yeah, it's just this, I think it's a very primal thing. And I think we don't even realize how much fear drives us. My words have become so much more powerful because they're not just tools to avoid being attacked or to like suppress my fear. They're means of exploring the world. They're means of exploring myself. I think the willingness to be a certain level of mean and nasty ties in with the severity of what it is that you're escaping within yourself.
Yeah. So the fear and the aggression
exactly.
kind of
The more fearful you are potentially of like getting attacked or having something found out about yourself that you're uncomfortable with, you're scared of, I think it propels the ferocity with which you might go after someone else. I was very anti-libertarian, which is really funny. Like I've done a whole like full circle thing.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, because I would look at it and I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to grapple with that because that's just people being privileged. Like you have the privilege to have those ideas because you don't need the support of the state to do things and And so I would just kind of like be disingenuous in the way I would dismiss people, which I find quite mean-spirited now because it's a refusal to actually engage with individuals and their ideas. It's quite nasty. I think it's a really mean thing to do, to tell people that their ideas are not even worth grappling with because of some characteristic that they have. I'm a lot more secure in my identity now. Like I'm a lot more secure as a person. I feel better about myself. I'm much more able to stand alone on the things that I care about. And I think that's because I've learned to define myself and my views in terms of values and principles, as opposed to like groups and ideologies. And so it frees me to just stand by myself and say, yeah, okay, I know that this group is saying that they're compassionate, but my value is not to be with this compassionate group. My value is to be compassionate. So if that takes me alone outside the group, then that's what it is. So, and there's a lot of this like mix up thing, right? So I'm kind of like have a mixed identity. Like I'm a little tan, I'm like half Latina, I'm like first gen. So it's like really kind of this mixed identity that I don't get to fit into anything well. And I think people that have that kind of more,
that. Yeah. I know that feeling.
There's a lot more of this pressure of like, oh, I need to show which group I'm a part of.
Overcompensating for them.
So these kind of things of like little like white privilege jokes and like the eagerness to differentiate myself. I think a lot of that was born of my own insecurity with my quite loose, like not very easily defined identity. So there was not one moment where I kind of woke up and was like, I'm awake,
Yeah.
It was more that there was these little cuts along the way that was like, this is not doing it for me.
What were those things that helped you along the way? I imagine reading is probably a part of it, but also talking to other people, right? We're getting to the free expression thing.
Yeah.
So what were those things that started to bring you back towards the pretty much polar opposite of where you were before, where you are now? How did you get there?
That's a great question. And I do think that it's been this process of opening up. And It started with me starting my newsletter where, previously I had this life that was like not really fulfilling. Like not only was I not openly expressing myself, not only was I making decisions about how I express myself and what I did based on, would that put me in the good graces of this group? How would that make me look? Is this good as defined by these other people, not, myself? I also wasn't doing the things I wanted to do in my career. I was working like I was doing like online teaching for children. Like I was teaching them English, whatever. Like it was just like one of these jobs. It's like, oh, you just do a job. I worked at a dog hotel before that, which is like, I love dogs, but like, I'm not trying to do that for the rest of my life.
Okay.
And so I had this life that was just really not that fulfilling to me, not that authentic. And that it was huge when I started writing, because I had to confront, well, wait a minute, what am I going to write? And writing is such an introspective.
Are they going to read it?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Writing is such an introspective thing because you have to sit there with yourself and your words, and it's a lot easier for me to, come up with stuff and just say like the right things in conversation. But when I sit there and write it out, it's like, it's really kind of an icky process to try to write things that you think other people are going to like.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of soul crushing.
Yeah.
That was like one of the first times where I openly said what I really thought on something that I knew I could get a lot of hell for doing so.
And did you?
Yeah.
What happened?
No, hell no, I actually didn't. That's the funny thing is that I really didn't. Instead, I got all this praise for it.
But not from the same people.
Not from the same people.
So what happened with those people?
They didn't really come for me. Which is interesting.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I know. I've really never actually gotten it that bad. Cancel culture things are very much like that. It's this public spectacle where you're seeing people get hell for transgressing. And it worked because I did not want to be one of those people. I did not want to have, endless amount of strangers attacking me and combing through my life and all of that.
So it wasn't necessarily your group of people. It was kind of the atmosphere you felt.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It just felt like an atmosphere that was like, don't bother trying to take that risk. And also I didn't have enough of a sense of my values at that time to understand why it was worth taking the risk nonetheless. Mm-hmm. And so finally it came to that head where I was like, I cannot just sit here and like not say anything. This is crazy. Like someone needs to say that it's like you can't justify terrible behavior and terrible treatment of others just because it suits your ideology. Like at what is the line? So there's a distinction between the feeling of the climate that you were in versus the actual climate. Mm-hmm. What was going on there? What was the difference? It's a real Wizard of Oz thing, right? It's a real the man behind the curtain. So, and this is true for so many things about fear. So often what you are afraid of seems much worse than what it actually is. That was what allowed me to be like a hardcore commie type, was that I would just see the benefit of the restriction. So yeah, why not restrict all hate speech? Why not, censor misinformation or bad ideas or things like that? Well, now I know why, because the effort might seem well-intentioned, but the reality is that there is a cost for that. When you create this tool, right, this tool of silencing speech, now that's on the table. That's on the table. So maybe you get to use it this one time against the people that you think really should be silenced. Like, okay, let's grant that. Like, okay, these people are really terrible. Like, and maybe it's the worst hate speech. It's so obviously hate speech, and it's just, we really don't need it. Okay, great. Yeah, I'll grant that. But now there is a mechanism for doing that to you or to people that are slightly less bad. And then it's just this, like, where do you draw the line of that? And so it was naivety that allowed me to believe that using a tool like that to silence people, to silence groups, to silence ideas could be used perfectly and with precision every single time. That is something that I've realized, no, we're better off with the chaos and the messiness and the discomfort of a true free speech environment than trying once again, many, many times as it's been done in history, to think, well, this time we're going to perfectly apply censorship and it'll work with no consequences.
Easy. We're just going to silence Nazis and racists.
That's it.
That's it. It's easy.
I mean, it works, right? We've done it so many times before and it's worked every time.
So what's wrong with that? What about somebody who says, we're just talking about Nazis, we're just talking about hate speech, we're just talking about racists?
Define hate speech. Define racist. I've been called a racist now because I've, been like, oh, I don't think maybe affirmative action is always great. Racist. Right. Okay, so I'm censored now?
Yeah.
These terms, we live in the perfect time to understand why censorship is so dangerous and so impossible to imply with perfection and precision.
Let's talk a little bit about art and free expression in the arts. Why is free expression in the arts so important to you?
Oh my gosh. There is no art without it. There's no art without free expression. There is only the attempt at art. The process of creating art is a process of becoming better at free expression. Because so much, at least for me, of art is just trying to push through all the ego stories, all the things of I think this artwork should be like this. No. It has to be purely divulged out and then worked with. And I think the thing that's beautiful about art that inspires us so much is when we look at it and we see humanity in it. And humanity has to be, the more humanity you can put into a piece of art, the more it resonates with people, the more it uplifts us. And so if you start trying to control it, you lose that humanity to it because you start to introduce fear into the piece of art because it's well, this is wrong, this is harmful, this is bad, or people won't like this. All these stories about I need to control this and it's based on fear. You can't have the primary goal of art to be to create something true and powerful and humanizing and then introduce this other goal of, but I don't want it to be offensive. No, you have to pursue art for what the true purpose of it is, or else you're not giving it the respect. And then you don't deserve to make good art.
Well, Salomé, it's been awesome talking to you. I want to ask you one more question because the theme, I think, of our conversation has been fear and overcoming fear and how fear is what motivates so much of censorship and sort of anti-free speech sentiment. What do you think is the greatest threat to free speech right now?
I would say fear and naivety, and self-censorship. I'm going to be honest, actually, because when I least cared about free speech was when I least used it myself. When I least realized that it is an avenue to create the life that I want, to create the being that I want. And so if we're afraid to just be open and to say things that are wrong just because we're figuring it out, and it's okay, because you can say, okay, I disagree with that, or actually, I take it back. I don't think that makes sense anymore. We put so much pressure because we're so afraid to be bad. And it's okay, that's great. I'm glad that you want to be a good person. But you have to understand that that's something that you define for yourself. We live in a place where it's so many different people, and the way that you become a good person is through actually knowing yourself and not being dictated by these lower impulses of fear. I'm just so grateful for free speech on a level that is so personal to me, because I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. I wouldn't have the life that I have that is so rewarding and so true for me and so exciting and beautiful that every day I get to adventure in this world if I wasn't able to be honest, to be open, to say what I think. It's a power that brings things to you. This interview is going to be published, and then people are going to watch it and they're going to say, oh, I hate that sucks. And they're going to go, and they're not going to want it. Okay, fine. But then there's going to be other people that say, that's exactly what I was thinking. I needed that. I'm so glad that I just found this. I'm going to try that too. And those are my people, and I can find them because I can speak honestly.
Perfectly said. Thank you so much, Salomé, for talking to us.
Yeah, absolutely.